In a city known the world over for its power and beauty,
People praise the memorials and like everything around.
Kanaya Glover sees the cracks in her hometown and mourns the people she loved who fell through them.
But they don't talk about how we have thousands of youth murder cases, for one. And for two, we have residents falling in the cracks of the concrete.
For Glover, those cracks in the concrete started to emerge when she was just 12.
I was actually in 6th grade when it happened. I get to my grandmother's house and it's on the news.
This memorial is for Damani Gaither.
And it says teen killed in triple shooting.
It was her cousin, Damani Gaither. He was the first of 3 people she's lost in the last 5.5 years to DC's gun violence.
I kind of felt guilty that I was going to move on with my life.
It's not just her. She could see the grief and dread and depression spread.
People who lose a family member or friend, they're also gun violence victims in a sense.
Firearm injuries ripple through families and communities with important clinical effects, even for those who did not sustain the firearm injury themselves. This includes mothers, fathers, and siblings.
Doctors now believe when kids are shot, it affects the families of victims, even if those children survive in measurable and devastating ways. Harvard's Dr. Zirui Strong just published research showing that. According to his work, children and adolescents who survived their firearm injuries experienced a 68% increase in psychiatric disorders within the first year following their gunshot injuries. Moms and dads experienced a 30% increase in psychiatric disorders and at least a 15% increase in substance use disorders. And survivors, according to Dr. Song, experience a 114% increase in substance use disorders.
The impact of a death in the family due to firearms was many-fold larger.
When children die of their gunshot wounds, mental health and substance use disorders skyrocket for parents and siblings of those who died as well. We think that if you survive, these children just move on with their lives, go back to school and get on with their days. And I think your research proves that's absolutely not the case.
Indeed, and not only for these children, but also for their families. Their moms and dads and siblings also sustained important and large increases in mental health disorders.
Few people in D.C. see the carnage of children who are shot more than Children's National Surgeon, Dr. Mikhail Petrosian.
I am angry about it because it's just devastating. I don't want to be in this situation.
There are days after troubling shifts operating on yet another victim. He says he screams out loud in his backyard just wishing this would be over. He's found it's not just worsening health effects for those victims. His research shows gunshot survivors are more likely to come back to the hospital as victims again.
30% of the patients you operate on from gunshot wounds will likely become patients again.
Correct. That's based on national statistics.
We're sentencing a generation of kids to never getting out of this loop.
Correct. So we need to do something.
He and his team are doing what they can, but he says it's not a problem hospitals alone can solve.
You might want to ask the guys across the street. You could see the Capitol building. And I'm not sure. I'm not a lawmaker. I'm not into politics. But the bottom line is I see these kids routinely, and it devastates not only families and the child itself, but him or herself, but also physicians.
If politicians won't act, Dr. Song says doctors need to, at a time when gunshot injuries are now the leading cause of child and adolescent death.
Evidence like this can motivate physicians, nurses, and other healthcare providers to ask about the well-being of brothers, sisters, and parents. It can motivate clinicians to ask about firearm safety at home, whether there is a gun. Is the gun safely stored? Is it locked? Is it loaded?
Kanaya Glover got so sick of it, she says a high school art project led her to start her nonprofit, Broken Concrete DC. She's determined to make sure we know the stories of our neighbors' kids who are falling through the cracks.
The trauma carry on throughout your entire life, no matter how old you are. You never recover from this. Grief does not have an expiration date.
Tanya Kenner is a lifelong Washingtonian, raised in a part of the city where deadly drugs are bought and used in parks where children should be playing. Gunfire rings out as kids walk home from school, where crime is so prevalent, it feels like the only solution for some is to leave. So that's what she did, moving her 3 kids across state lines to Temple Hills.
When it comes to safety, I feel like they're a little bit safer in Maryland.
But this mom says despite moving them out of the district, she still worries for their safety and well-being because of social media. Tanya says one of her teenage daughters had to change schools in recent years after an online dispute.
It was like a group of 20 girls.
Turned violent.
It happened on social media for a couple of weeks, ended up spilling into the schoolhouse.
But Tanya counts her family as lucky, as researchers like Desmond Patton say social media is all too often fueling disputes among young people that turn deadly. We traveled to Philadelphia to talk to him.
In the community that I work in, cyberbullying means life or death.
The University of Pennsylvania professor began studying how inner-city youth violence plays out over social media after observing an online fight between two Chicago rappers, Chief Keef and Lil JoJo, in 2012.
They were beefing on Twitter, and then Lil JoJo posted his exact location on Twitter. I was like, if you want to do something about this beef, meet me here. And he was murdered in that exact location within 3 hours.
Chief Keef denied involvement, and the rapper's killer was never caught. But the murder inspired Patton to create the Safe Lab, where he documents how young people of color relate to the internet, calling social media a megaphone that has the ability to accelerate conflict.
20 years ago, someone would step on your shoe and you would get upset about that and want to fight about that. Well, now the stepping on your shoe is happening on social media, and now you have thousands of people that are expecting you to do something about it.
They don't bluff. These kids that are involved in this violent trend, they don't bluff.
DC's Assistant Police Chief Andre Wright heads youth and family engagement for the department. He says there's a real reason to be concerned about how quickly a life can end after a simple post.
It could be minutes. I mean, there are cases where children are making these threats to one another while they're driving to meet each other.
Too often, innocent people are caught in the crossfire, like 10-year-old Micaiah Wilson, shot and killed outside her home back in 2018. Prosecutors say several men opened fire in the Clay Terrace neighborhood because of a petty social media feud. In October, 6 men were sentenced for their role in her murder. Data directly linking social media to violence is hard to come by, but some researchers see a connection between the explosion of social media apps and a rise in youth homicide rates. After a decline, U.S. homicide rates for 15 to 19-year-olds rose 91% from 2014 to 2021, federal data shows. Among people ages 20 to 24, the homicide rate increased 49% in roughly the same time frame.
The youth are very savvy with using the social media to be able to get messages across to their ops or individuals who they feel are their opposition.
We met community activist and radio personality Easy Street on Minnesota Avenue in Northeast D.C., where he works as a violence interrupter with the city's Safe Passage program, teaching kids conflict resolution and relationship building.
These kids experience things when they're very, very young that they should not be seeing, feeling, experiencing it, and then they end up in the system, committed, because what happens? Hurt people hurt people.
He knows what it's like to lose a mentee to violence that started online and ended in real life.
So 1 minute you're working with the kid and you're seeing them in one of your programs, and you hear the next day that so-and-so is no longer with us because the kid, was on the internet and said some things and somebody saw the video and bam.
Patton says social media should be thought of as a neighborhood, a place where young people are living their lives. And for them, it's not virtual, it's reality. He says as communities work to end gun violence, they need to pay equal attention to what's happening online too.
We're missing the link between the reality of the community, the neighborhood, and the new digital street.
Tanya's son, Tony, who's focused on getting into college, says that risk is part of why he doesn't spend a lot of time on social media.
I definitely limit how much access I give to social media. Like I say, I just use it for entertainment and to just observe things so I can keep up with the trends and know what's going on to protect myself.
Being on social media to protect yourself, that's something.
Definitely. Because I'd rather know what's going on than just be out here naive and blind.
We selected Marshall Heights because of a number of different reasons. First, we wanted somewhere where our children would have access to green space. We also wanted a place that was relatively safe. What we're seeing now is just a community that is deteriorating from its core.
Delia Housel's security cameras captured this gunfight outside of her home in Southeast D.C. last summer. Her husband and 3 children sheltered inside as shooters fired at each other through the family's front yard.
You can see the bullet, the fire from the bullet from the gun.
Was that the last straw?
That was the last straw for us.
While overall gun crimes are up citywide, Delia says she and her husband want to leave their home in Ward 7, where data shows gun violence and homicides have steadily risen since they moved in 6 years ago.
One option that we are really considering is whether or not we should move out to Maryland or Virginia.
It's a move she doesn't take lightly, especially as she serves on her advisory neighborhood commission. But escaping the gunfire and random acts of violence isn't that simple for Delia or many of her neighbors. Though she owns her home and could sell, the average rate on a 30-year mortgage is hovering near 8%.
So it would completely leave us house poor.
Delia and her husband count themselves lucky, however, because they do have the means to move. But the I-Team is hearing from other families in the district who say they're held back by a different set of obstacles, especially those in D.C.'s public housing.
And I just want them to feel safe doing the smallest things, taking the trash out, getting the groceries out the car. It's rough because you don't know when to duck and dodge from bullets.
News 4 first interviewed Ebony back in 2019 after an unimaginable pattern of events.
He was shot with an AK-47.
Her two sons, then only 12 and 13 years old, were both shot within months of each other near Kenilworth Avenue in Northeast. They both survived, but her 13-year-old, Roy Nall, was paralyzed from the waist down. Right after the shootings, Ebony told a News 4 reporter she pleaded with the D.C. Housing Authority to relocate her family. Watching the news report today, she says not much has changed.
Everybody can't afford to buy houses and live in a nice area.
And during that interview, you had said, I just want to move. I want to move to a safe place.
And I still do.
Ebony says D.C. Housing Authority did eventually relocate her family, but she says her new neighborhood in Lincoln Heights isn't any safer, and it's not wheelchair accessible for her now 17-year-old son, who struggles just to get up and down the stairs.
Now that I need a bigger unit that is handicap accessible, they are claiming they don't have that.
Ebony says she's doing all she can to make a move, but feels her options are limited. She said she can't afford market rate rent while also paying utilities and other bills families face. She applied for federal relief through the Housing Choice Voucher Program, formerly called Section 8, which could allow her to rent anywhere in the city. But she says she's been on that list for nearly 20 years. Currently, she is applying to DC's Home Purchase Assistance Program and hoping it doesn't run out of money like it did in the last fiscal year.
I'm stuck here in D.C. trying to, make an honest living to provide for my children.
The D.C. Housing Authority's waitlist to access housing vouchers and public housing have been closed since 2013, and there's no scheduled time to reopen it. We wanted to ask the Housing Authority about the waitlist and some of the challenges it's up against when trying to move families out of public housing they don't feel safe in. They sent out their police chief, who couldn't talk to those larger issues, but offered this.
Residents are very concerned, especially if you were a victim of crime, then certainly you feel you're in crisis.
Yashim Sayan with the DC Policy Center, a nonprofit think tank, says right now there's just not enough affordable housing.
We've put a lot of money in housing, but government subsidies will never be enough to meet all the needs.
Yashim says the problem with those investments is where they're going.
It's cheaper to build these units in less resourced parts of towns,
creating what she calls economic segregation. We asked the chief about that, and he says the city is trying to do more mixed development and hopes the mayor's programs may help. Even though Delia's family hasn't found a new home to move to, they've begun packing up. It's not what they want to do. They love their community and would prefer to stay.
Let's go. Let's see what you have. You have to put your family's safety first. And again, we're hoping that there are, with some of the new initiatives coming down the pike, that the communities will begin to be safer. It's just a matter of time, right?
Can you wait for that long?
Exactly. That's the question.
All this week, the News 4 I-Team has explored the issue of gun violence in the district, taking a look at its root causes and rippling impacts. Tonight, you'll hear directly from a group of DC's youths about what that reality means for them.
Our investigative reporter Tracy Wilkins recently sat down with 6 teenagers who live in neighborhoods that have seen some of the most gun violence. Tracy joins us now in the studio with more of her reporting. Tracy?
Well, Jim, if you look at the news in this city without context, you may walk away thinking most of DC's black teens are involved in crimes and gun violence because of how pervasive the problem feels. The truth is, the overwhelming majority of kids in this city, like the ones who we talked to in this story, are doing the right thing. And like the rest of us say, they're trying to survive the impacts of the people who aren't.
They're not officially ordered yet.
For many of DC's youth, the Deanwood Recreation Center in Northeast is a safe place, one these teens say they desperately need.
You know, mass incarceration has very obvious effects in DC.
They're part of a media program run by some of the city's legendary broadcasters. Kids before them have gone on to earn full college scholarships, breaking generational cycles of poverty.
It's like inspiring because he finished college.
The center is also a break from what's happening outside these walls, where ongoing gun crime blasts away any feeling of safety for the people who live here. The kids sat down with News 4 to talk about it.
It makes you anxious all the time because, you never know what can happen.
These teens, sisters Jessica and Jasmine, siblings Naya and Aaron, Giovanni and Jordan, live in different neighborhoods and go to different schools, but many of them tell a similar story about what and whom they've lost to gun violence.
I would say that gun violence has definitely deprived me of my youth.
Have any of you lost a friend to gun violence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was on the cheerleading team. I just know she got shot.
One of my classmates last year was at a 7-Eleven and got shot.
I lost a friend last school year who got killed right outside his home.
After there's gun violence and you've lost someone at school, what is the feeling for you after that?
When it hits so close to home, it just leaves like a sense of fear over everyone. You shouldn't have to feel that way as a teenager in DC.
Many of these students live in Wards 7 and 8, the ones most impacted by gun-related violence in the district. A problem so pervasive, some were surprised by my next question. Have any of you heard gunshots before?
Yes. Every day. And I'm so not desensitized to it because I'm aware of how horrible this issue is, but it's like, here goes another one.
Even in school should feel like a safe place, but in school you still have to stay paranoid. Because when we get out of school at 3:30, you don't know if a gunshot gonna go off because people beefing.
Jasmine lives in Anacostia and says she's been aware of gun violence as long as she can remember.
The first day of school in 3rd grade, we just got off the bus. A man got shot right in front of us. All I knew was to just run. Didn't stand there in fear. I knew what to do. It's a shame that I know what to do when I hear those bullets and I see that gun come out.
Like so many kids their age, these teens are focused on their studies, applying to college, dreaming of their careers, maybe even one in journalism.
I'm one of the best in our mass media academy, one of the best photographers you ever meet in your career.
But we learned they're achieving those dreams despite a near constant fear for their safety. How many of you feel safe inside of your home? How many of you feel safe outside of your home in your neighborhood? How many of you feel safe at school? Is there anywhere that you all feel safe? Is there anywhere that you feel protected?
Primarily just at home.
Everything from outside comes in. There's people with bullets going through their windows, and that's literally our last resort for safety. This sounds weird, but I feel safest in my bathroom because I know a bullet can't come through the wall. On holidays like 4th of July and New Year's, when those bullets start ringing, I have to either hide in my hallway or in the bathroom because those are the only 2 places in the house I know where I won't be hit.
Earlier this year, these teens sat down with some city leaders to tell their stories and ideas for what they say could help, like more programs for kids through recreation centers, opportunities for employment, and the transportation to get them there.
We just need more programs for young black males, I feel like, because as me growing up, I used to go to the Boys and Girls Club, but just a lot of people, like a lot of young black males don't have that luxury of going to a Boys and Girls Club and having that one counselor, one teacher that they're close with. I feel like that's something that the young black males need right now.
Do you feel like this city has failed you?
in DC, you make it how you want to make it. Like, but if you hang around people that are gonna push you to do the things that you want to do, then you could be successful.
You said that you do feel like you've been failed. Why?
The young people that are working hard and making something out of themselves always are also a part of those front pages where, you know, they're losing their lives doing what they're supposed to do, coming home from work, their extracurriculars. The things that are out of our control and in their hands have not been managed well.